Look at her, thinking she belongs here with that delivery bag, sneered the white grandson of the CEO, his voice dripping with scorn as he mocked the black delivery driver at the glittering gala. As a food courier for a high-end service, she maneuvered through a sea of wealth, balancing trays of gourmet orders while enduring snide remarks, racial slights, and outright humiliation, like wine accidentally spilled on her. The unfair treatment stung, yet her resilience held firm against the elite's disdain. But when a powerful figure steps into the fray, the night takes an unexpected turn, hinting at a reckoning that could reshape her future. Will justice prevail? Stick around to find out. Don't forget to subscribe to our latest stories and share in the comments where you're watching from. This tale of courage and redemption is one you won't want to miss. The city skyline shimmered like a tapestry of stars, its lights piercing the velvet dusk as they reflected off the glass facade of the Celestine, a rooftop bar perched atop one of the city's sleekest skyscrapers. The venue pulsed with opulence, its polished marble floors catching the glow of crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen constellations. Tonight, it played host to the grand gala celebrating the 50th anniversary of Sterling Enterprises, a conglomerate that defined wealth in its most unapologetic form. The air thrummed with the soft strains of a live jazz quartet, their notes weaving through the chatter of CEOs, socialites, and influencers who swirled in a dance of power and privilege. Laughter bubbled over the clink of champagne flutes, and the scent of expensive perfume mingled with the crisp night breeze drifting in from the open terrace. Diane Ramirez stepped through the service entrance, her quick-bite delivery bag slung over her shoulder, its insulated bulk a stark contrast to the tailored elegance surrounding her. The narrow hallway smelled faintly of cleaning solution, a reminder of her place in this world of excess. Her dark eyes flicked to her phone, double-checking the order details. A selection of gourmet appetizers, truffle-infused canapés, and caviar-topped blinis, destined for the gala's elite. Diane's breath caught as she adjusted her cap, her tightly coiled curls tucked beneath it, and smoothed the creases in her navy quick-bite jacket. The ride through the city's chaotic streets had left her legs aching, her bike chained hastily below, but she carried herself with a quiet resolve, her posture straight despite the weight of the night. This wasn't Diane's first delivery to a place like Celestine. She'd grown accustomed to the sidelong glances, the way her presence seemed to fade into the background for those draped in designer suits and glittering jewels. At 27, she knew her role: deliver, smile, and leave. But each trip to these gilded spaces carried a sting, a reminder of the chasm between her world and theirs. Diane's life was one of calculated sacrifices, skipping meals to stretch the grocery budget, working late to cover her grandmother's insulin costs, and saving every spare dollar for her brother Jamal's dream of engineering school. Quick-Bite paid better than her previous jobs, waitressing, retail, odd gigs, but it demanded she navigate the city's underbelly and its penthouses alike, often under the weight of dismissive stares. As she stepped into the service elevator, the hum of its ascent mirrored the nervous flutter in her chest. Diane glanced at her reflection in the polished steel doors, her brown skin glowing faintly under the fluorescent light. She adjusted her cap again, a small act of defiance against the chaos of the night. The elevator dinged, and she emerged into the frenetic energy of the gala's back room. Staff bustled around her, caterers balancing trays, bartenders pouring drinks with practiced flair. A coordinator, a harried woman with a clipboard, waved Diane over. "Sterling order, right? Drop it there," she said, pointing to a stainless steel counter. Diane complied, sliding the bag off her shoulder and unzipping it with care, the aroma of the appetizers briefly cutting through the sterile scent of the kitchen. "Payments with the host," the coordinator added, already turning away. Diane nodded, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. She scanned the room, her gaze sharp but unobtrusive, taking in the controlled chaos. A waiter rushed past, nearly knocking her elbow, and muttered an apology without breaking stride. Diane didn't mind. She was used to being invisible here. She made her way toward the main floor where the gala's full splendor unfolded. The terrace opened to a breathtaking view of the city, its lights sprawling like a digital ocean. Guests clustered in elegant groups, their conversations a low hum punctuated by bursts of laughter. Women in sequined gowns glided past, their heels clicking against the marble, while men in tailored tuxedos swapped stories of stock markets and summer homes. Diane's heart quickened as she stepped into the crowd, her quick-bite jacket a beacon of her outsider status. She clutched the receipt tablet, its screen glowing with the order total. $275. Her job was simple: get the payment, get out. But the weight of the room pressed against her. She felt the eyes of a few guests linger, their glances a mix of curiosity and disdain, as if her presence were a minor disruption to their curated evening. Diane kept her expression neutral, her smile practiced and polite, but inside she braced for the inevitable. Places like Celestine were stages for the powerful, and she was merely part of the set, a prop to be ignored or worse, noticed for the wrong reasons. She wove through the crowd, her steps measured, avoiding the sway of a woman's silk shawl and the careless gesture of a man waving his champagne flute. The jazz quartet shifted to a slower melody, its notes wrapping around the chatter like a velvet ribbon. Diane's eyes darted to the host's table, where a group of men in sharp suits stood, their laughter louder than the rest. She recognized the type, entitled, untouchable, the kind who tipped poorly and spoke as if she weren't there. Her stomach tightened, but she pushed forward, her resolve a quiet fire. This delivery was just another hurdle, another moment to endure for her grandmother's health, for Jamal's future. As Diane neared the table, the hum of the gala seemed to sharpen, the air charged with an unspoken tension. She didn't know it yet, but the night was about to shift, its opulent facade cracking under the weight of one man's cruelty and another's unexpected justice. For now, she stood at the edge of the crowd, tablet in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The city sparkled below, indifferent to her struggle, but Diane Ramirez carried on, her strength a silent promise to those she loved. The Celestine buzzed with a restless energy, its rooftop aglow under the soft shimmer of chandeliers, and the city's distant pulse. The jazz quartet's melody curled through the air, a delicate counterpoint to the vibrant hum of conversations among the gala's elite. Diane Ramirez stood near the host's table, her quick-bite tablet glowing with the $275 order total, her fingers steady despite the undercurrent of unease rippling through her. She navigated the crowd with practiced ease, her navy jacket a stark contrast to the sea of silk and satin, her presence a fleeting shadow in their world of extravagance. Diane's dark eyes scanned the group ahead, searching for the host, her resolve a quiet anchor amid the opulent chaos. A ripple of attention swept through the room, heads turning toward the terrace entrance. Victor Langston, the 30-year-old, grandson of Sterling Enterprises CEO, strode in with a swagger that demanded notice. His bespoke suit hugged his tall frame, the fabric catching the light with every confident step. His blonde hair was swept back, his smile sharp and calculated, exuding the kind of privilege that needed no explanation. Victor was a fixture in the city's high society, his name synonymous with wealth and a reputation for wielding it like a weapon. The guests parted subtly, their murmurs softening as he passed, his presence a magnet for admiration and envy alike. Diane felt the shift in the room's rhythm, her instincts prickling as she caught sight of Victor. She tightened her grip on the tablet, her heart a steady drumbeat against the rising tension. She'd dealt with men like him before, those who saw her as less than a mere cog in their gilded machine. But tonight, her focus was singular: secure the payment and leave. She stepped forward, weaving through a cluster of guests, her movements precise yet unobtrusive. The jazz notes swirled around her, a fleeting comfort as she approached the host's table where Victor now held court, his laughter loud and commanding. Well, what do we have here? Victor's voice cut through the chatter, his blue eyes locking onto Diane as she neared. His tone carried a mocking lilt, sharp enough to draw the attention of his entourage, a group of young men in tailored suits, their smiles mirroring his. Diane's steps faltered for a fraction of a second, but she steadied herself, her expression a mask of professionalism. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice clear and even. "I'm here with the Quick Bite delivery. I just need your signature and payment for the order." Victor tilted his head, his smirk widening as he took her in, from the navy cap shielding her curls to the scuffed sneakers peeking beneath her jacket. "Delivery girl, huh?" he said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. "Didn't know Quick Bite was sending this to our little soiree." His words dripped with condescension, each syllable a barb aimed at her place in their world. His companions chuckled, their amusement a low hum that grated against Diane's nerves. She felt the weight of their gazes, the unspoken judgment that she was an intruder in their rarefied air. Diane's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes steady, meeting Victor's with a calm that belied the fire simmering within. "The total is $275, sir," she said, holding out the tablet, its screen a quiet challenge. Victor leaned back, crossing his arms, his smirk unfaltering. $275? For what, some overpriced snacks?" he scoffed, glancing at his friends for approval. "You must think you're serving royalty here." The group laughed again, their mirth a chorus that echoed across the terrace, drawing more eyes to the unfolding scene. Swallowing the sting of his words, Diane maintained her composure, her fingers brushing the edge of the tablet. She'd heard worse slights about her race, her job, her very existence, but each one carved a small wound, invisible yet raw. Her thoughts flickered to her grandmother's hospital bills, to Jamal's hopeful grin when he talked about college. This moment, this humiliation was just another obstacle to endure. "It's for the gourmet appetizers, sir," she said, her tone unwavering. "If you could sign here, I'll be on my way." Victor's eyes narrowed, his amusement sharpening into something colder. "Oh, I'll sign when I'm good and ready," he said, his voice low and taunting. "You're eager to get paid, aren't you? Guess that's what happens when you're scraping by." The words landed like a slap, their venom subtle enough to avoid outright scandal but cutting all the same. Diane felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her pulse quickening, but she refused to let him see her falter. She stood taller, her shoulders squared, the tablet a lifeline in her hands. Around them, the gala continued its glittering dance, guests sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries, oblivious or indifferent to the quiet cruelty unfolding. A woman in a sequined gown glanced over, her curiosity fleeting before she turned back to her conversation. Diane's world narrowed to the space between her and Victor, the air thick with his entitlement and her defiance. "I'm just doing my job, sir," she said, her voice a steady thread, woven with the strength she'd honed through years of struggle. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." Victor leaned forward, his smirk twisting into a grin that promised trouble. "Patience is a virtue, you know," he said, his tone mocking. "Let's see how long you can wait. Delivery." "Girl!" He waved a hand dismissively, turning to his entourage with a laugh, as if Diane were a minor inconvenience, a prop in his performance of power. The group echoed his amusement, their laughter a jagged edge against the soft jazz notes drifting. Through the night, Diane stepped back, her fingers tightening around the tablet, her breath shallow but controlled. She moved to the edge of the host's table, her presence a quiet rebellion against Victor's scorn. The city lights sprawled below, their glow a distant promise of something beyond this moment. Diane's mind raced, her resolve a flickering flame. She would not let this man break her. She thought of her grandmother's gentle voice urging her to keep her head high, and Jamal's dreams tethered to her every delivery. This night was far from over, and though she couldn't see it yet, the arrival of Victor Langston had set in motion a chain of events that would test her strength and unveil an unexpected ally. The Celestine shimmered under the night sky, its rooftop a stage where wealth and power performed their intricate dance. The jazz quartet's notes wove through the air, a delicate veil over the murmur of elite conversations. But for Diane Ramirez, the world had narrowed to the hostile orbit of Victor Langston's table. She stood poised, her quick bite tablet clutched, like a shield, its screen still glowing with the unpaid $275 order. Diane's dark eyes remained steady, her posture unwavering despite the sting of Victor's earlier taunts. The city's lights sprawled below, indifferent to the tension coiling around her, but she held her ground, her resolve a quiet fire against the chill of his mockery. Victor lounged against the table, his bespoke suit catching the chandelier's glow, his smirk a blade honed by privilege. His entourage, a cluster of sharp-suited men, fed off his energy, their laughter a low rumble that grated against Diane's nerves. She felt their eyes on her, dissecting her navy jacket, her scuffed sneakers, her very existence as an affront to their curated world. "Still here, delivery girl," Victor drawled, his voice laced with amusement as he swirled a fresh glass of red wine. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." His companions snickered, their gazes darting between him and Diane, eager for the next act in his performance. Diane's fingers tightened around the tablet, her breath measured. "I'm waiting for the payment, sir," she said, her tone calm, but firm, a thread of steel woven through her words. She'd faced condescension before, customers who sneered at her job, who saw her blackness as a mark of inferiority, but Victor's cruelty carried a sharper edge, a deliberate intent to wound. Her mind flickered to her grandmother's frail hands, to Jamal's late-night study sessions, grounding her in purpose. She would not let this man unravel her. Victor's eyes gleamed, sensing her defiance. He straightened, his movements theatrical, as if playing to an invisible audience. "Payment, huh?" he said, his voice rising just enough to draw nearby guests' attention. "You think you're entitled to rush me?" He stepped closer, his wine glass dangling carelessly between his fingers. Diane held her ground, her heart pounding, but her expression impassive. The crowd's chatter softened, curious eyes turning toward the unfolding scene. A woman in a sapphire gown paused mid-sip, her lips pursed in mild intrigue, while a man nearby checked his phone, already framing the moment for a social media post. With a sudden, exaggerated stumble, Victor lurched forward, his wine glass tipping. A cascade of red wine splashed over Diane's head, soaking her cap and trickling down her face, staining her quick-bite jacket in dark splotches. The liquid stung her eyes, its sharp scent filling her senses, but the laughter that erupted from Victor's group hit harder. "Whoops!" Victor exclaimed, his voice dripping with mock surprise. "Clumsy me, guess I didn't see you there." His entourage roared, their amusement echoed by a few scattered guests, phones flashing as they captured the humiliation. The jazz quartet played on, oblivious, its melody a cruel counterpoint to the moment. Diane's chest tightened, the weight of their laughter pressing against her like a physical force. Her hands trembled as she wiped the wine from her face with her sleeve, the fabric now sticky and ruined. Humiliation burned hot in her throat, but she forced it down, her jaw clenched to keep her emotions in check. "Accidents happen, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor threatening to break through. "I still need the payment." The words were a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let Victor's cruelty define her. She stood taller, her dark eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment, daring him to push further. Victor's smirk faltered, his amusement giving way to a flicker of irritation. "You're a tough one, aren't you?" he said, his tone sharper now, less playful. He tossed a crumpled napkin at her, the gesture careless but pointed. "Clean yourself up, you're making a mess of my gala." The crowd's laughter swelled again, a jagged wave that threatened to drown Diane's composure. She caught the napkin reflexively, her fingers crushing it as she fought the urge to respond. Her mind raced, torn between anger and the need to stay professional. She thought of her grandmother's gentle voice, urging her to rise above, and Jamal's hopeful eyes, counting on her strength. Stepping back, Diane moved to the edge of the terrace, her shoes leaving faint, wet prints on the marble. She pulled a rag from her delivery bag, its worn fabric a stark contrast to the gala's opulence, and began dabbing at her jacket. The wine had seeped into the fabric, a dark stain mirroring the ache in her chest. She glanced at the city below, its lights a distant reminder of a world beyond this moment. The crowd's attention shifted back to their conversations, the incident already fading into their evening's entertainment. But for Diane, it lingered like a bruise. A nearby server, a young man with kind eyes, approached cautiously. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, barely audible over the jazz. Diane nodded, her jaw tight. "I'm fine," she said, her words clipped but grateful. "Just need to clean this up." She focused on the rag, her movements deliberate, grounding herself in the act. The server hesitated, then returned to his duties, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Diane's mind churned, replaying Victor's words, his calculated cruelty. She'd endured slights before, but this felt personal, a public attempt to strip her of dignity. As she wiped the last of the wine from her cap, Diane's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let Victor's actions break her. She thought of her grandmother's hospital bed, the stack of bills on the kitchen table, Jamal's dreams pinned to her every delivery. This night was a test, one she would pass, not for Victor or the gala's elite, but for those who mattered most. She slipped the rag back into her bag, her fingers brushing the tablet, its screen still waiting for Victor's signature. The gala continued its glittering rhythm, but Diane felt a shift within her, a quiet strength taking root. Unbeknownst to her, eyes watched from the shadows, and the night was poised to turn, its course altered by a force she couldn't yet see. The Celestine pulsed with the gala's relentless glamour, its rooftop a glittering stage where the elite played their parts under the city's watchful skyline. The jazz quartet's melody drifted like a sigh, barely softening the sting of laughter still echoing in Diane Ramirez's ears. She stood at the terrace's edge, her quick-bite jacket sodden with wine, the rag in her hand now streaked with red. Her dark eyes burned with restrained fury, but her face remained a mask of calm, her resolve a quiet fortress against the humiliation Victor Langston had inflicted. Diane's fingers brushed the tablet in her bag, its unpaid $275 order, a persistent reminder of her purpose. The city lights below shimmered, distant and indifferent, but she drew strength from thoughts of her grandmother's resilience and Jamal's dreams, anchoring her to the moment. A hush rippled through the crowd, a subtle shift in the air that pulled Diane's attention. Heads turned toward the far end of the terrace, where a figure emerged from the shadows of a private balcony. James Sterling, the 38-year-old billionaire and major shareholder of Sterling Enterprises, stepped into the light, his presence commanding an effortless silence. His charcoal suit was understated yet impeccable, his dark hair flecked with early silver, and his piercing green eyes swept the room with an intensity that belied his calm demeanor. James was a man of quiet power, his wealth matched by a reputation for sharp intellect and a commitment to causes beyond profit. He'd been watching, unseen from above, his gaze catching every detail of Victor's cruelty. Diane, unaware of his scrutiny, adjusted her stained jacket, her movements deliberate as she prepared to approach Victor again. The weight of the crowd's earlier laughter lingered, but she steeled herself, her breath steadying. James's arrival shifted the gala's rhythm, the chatter fading to a murmur as guests registered his presence. He moved with purpose, his steps measured, cutting through the throng like a blade through silk. Diane sensed the change, her eyes flicking toward him, but she remained focused, clutching her tablet, ready to press for payment. James stopped near Victor's table, where the young heir lounged, oblivious, his entourage still chuckling over their private jests. "Victor," James said, his voice low but resonant, slicing through the jazz like a cold wind. The single word carried a weight that made Victor's smirk falter, his glass pausing mid-air. Diane froze, her tablet half raised, sensing the tension coiling tighter. James's eyes locked onto Victor, unyielding, his expression a blend of authority and restrained anger. "Care to explain why you're turning my company's gala into a spectacle of cruelty?" he asked, each syllable precise, cutting through the room's pretense. Victor's face flushed, his confidence crumbling under James's gaze. "It was just a bit of fun, James," he stammered, his voice thinner now, lacking its earlier bravado. "No harm done." The words hung weak, unconvincing, as the crowd's attention sharpened, guests shifting uncomfortably, their champagne, flutes lowered. Diane stood rooted, her heart pounding, the wine still clinging to her skin, a stark reminder of the moment James had witnessed. She felt exposed, yet something in his tone sparked a flicker of hope, a sense that the night might shift. James raised a hand, silencing Victor's excuses. "Fun?" he repeated, his voice icy, carrying across the terrace. "You think humiliating a hard-working woman is fun?" He turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over them like a searchlight. "Did anyone else find this amusing?" The question landed like a stone, the silence that followed heavy with unease. A woman in a velvet dress looked away, her fingers tightening around her clutch. A man nearby coughed, his eyes fixed on the floor. Diane's breath caught, her hands trembling slightly, but she held her head high, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. Turning back to Victor, James's expression hardened. "Pay her. Now. Double the amount, 550, for the trouble you've caused." His tone left no room for argument, a command rooted in the authority of a man who held the company's future in his hands. Victor fumbled with his phone, his fingers clumsy as he initiated the transfer, the smirk long gone from his face. Diane watched, her pulse racing as the tablet in her hand pinged with the completed payment. She glanced at the screen, the $550 a small victory, but her chest still ached with the weight of the crowd's laughter. James gestured to a pair of security guards near the terrace entrance, their black suits blending with the shadows. "Escort. Mr. Langston out," he said, his voice unwavering. "His behavior doesn't represent Sterling Enterprises." Victor opened his mouth to protest, but the guards were already at his side, their presence a silent ultimatum. He shot Diane a fleeting, resentful glance, then turned, his step stiff as he was led away, the crowd parting to let him pass. Whispers followed, a low buzz of shock and curiosity, but James's authority held the room in thrall. Diane stood, motionless, her tablet now heavy in her hands, the wine's sticky residue a lingering insult. James turned to her, his expression softening, his green eyes meeting hers with a warmth that caught her off guard. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle, a stark contrast to the steel he'd shown Victor. "Diane Ramirez," she replied, her tone steady despite the storm of emotions within. Her cheeks burned, but she met his gaze, her dignity a quiet defiance against the night's ordeal. "You handled that with remarkable grace, Diane," James said, his words carrying a sincerity that pierced her defenses. "Not everyone could." He paused, studying her, as if seeing beyond the stained jacket and the delivery bag. The crowd's attention lingered, but for the first time Diane felt seen, not as a prop, but as a person. James's presence was a shield, his intervention a crack in the gala's polished facade. The jazz quartet played on, its notes a faint echo, as Diane sensed the night teetering on the edge of something new, a possibility she couldn't yet grasp. The Celestine glimmered under the night's embrace, its rooftop now hushed in the wake of James Sterling's intervention. The jazz quartet's melody softened to a wistful hum, as if sensing the shift in the gala's pulse. Diane Ramirez stood near the terrace's edge, her quick-bite tablet now silent, the $550 payment a quiet triumph overshadowed by the lingering sting of wine-soaked humiliation. Her navy jacket clung to her skin, the red stains a stark reminder of Victor's cruelty, but Diane's dark eyes held steady, her posture a testament to resilience forged through years of struggle. The city's skyline stretched below, its lights a mosaic of possibility, yet her heart raced with uncertainty, the weight of the night pressing against her. James Sterling, his presence still commanding despite the softened lines of his expression, stepped closer, his charcoal suit catching the faint glow of the chandeliers. The crowd's murmurs resumed, a cautious return to normalcy, but their eyes lingered on Diane and James, sensing an unspoken shift. Diane felt the weight of their gazes, a mix of curiosity and judgment, but James's focus was singular, his green eyes locking onto hers with a warmth that disarmed her defenses. "Diane Ramirez," he said, repeating her name as if committing it to memory, his voice low and deliberate, a contrast to the icy authority he'd wielded moments ago. "You showed remarkable composure out there." Diane's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the tablet, its cool surface grounding her. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice steady but tinged with caution. She wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like James, whose wealth and influence dwarfed the world she navigated daily. Her mind flickered to her grandmother's hospital bed, to Jamal's textbook stacked on their kitchen table, tethering her to the reality beyond this gilded moment. "I was just doing my job," she added, her words a shield deflecting the vulnerability threatening to surface. James's lips curved into a faint smile, not of pity but of respect. "Doing your job under that kind of pressure is no small feat," he said, his tone earnest, carrying a weight that made Diane pause. He gestured toward a quieter corner of the terrace, away from the crowd's prying eyes. "May we speak for a moment?" Diane hesitated, her instincts warring between caution and curiosity, but the sincerity in his gaze tipped the balance. She nodded, following him to a small alcove where the city's lights framed them like a painting, the jazz notes a soft backdrop. As they stood, the distance between them felt less like a divide of wealth and more like a shared understanding. James leaned against the railing, his posture relaxed but his eyes intent. "I run an organization called Sterling Futures," he began, his voice steady, each word chosen with care. "We focus on education, career development, and building opportunities for those who've faced barriers. I've seen a lot of people in high-pressure situations, Diane, but few handle it with the dignity you showed tonight." Diane's heart quickened, her mind racing to process his words. The idea of being seen, truly seen by someone of James's stature was both exhilarating and unsettling. She shifted her weight, the damp fabric of her jacket a reminder of the night's earlier sting. "I appreciate that, sir," she said, her voice softer now, tinged with the fatigue she'd held at bay. "But I'm just trying to get through the night." Her honesty slipped out, raw and unguarded, and she instantly regretted it, fearing it might betray weakness. James's expression didn't waver. If anything, it deepened with understanding. "I get it," he said, his tone devoid of condescension. "But what I saw out there wasn't just someone getting through. It was a strength, resilience. That's the kind of quality we need at Sterling Futures." He reached into his suit pocket, producing a sleek business card, its embossed lettering catching the light. "I'd like you to come by my office tomorrow, Diane. There's a role I think you'd be perfect for. A chance to make a real impact." Diane stared at the card, her fingers hesitating before taking it. The weight of his offer settled over her, heavy with possibility yet shadowed by doubt. She'd spent years scraping by, her dreams tethered to survival, not ambition. Could this be real? "What kind of role?" she asked, her voice cautious, her eyes searching his for any hint of insincerity. James met her gaze squarely. "Oh, program coordinator, to start. You'd help shape initiatives for young people, people like you who've had to fight for every step. We'll discuss details tomorrow, but I see potential in you, Diane." Her throat tightened, a storm of emotions, swirling within, gratitude, disbelief, a flicker of hope she hadn't dared entertain. She slipped the card into her bag, its presence a small but tangible promise. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice steady now, infused with a quiet determination. "I'll be there." James nodded, his smile brief but genuine. "Get some rest. You've earned it." He stepped back, giving her space, his presence lingering like a beacon in the night's chaos. Diane turned, her steps slow as she made her way toward the service exit, the tablet now a forgotten weight in her hand. The crowd's chatter swelled. Again, the gala reclaiming its rhythm. But Diane felt detached, as if the world had tilted slightly. The wine stains on her jacket, The memory of Victor's laughter seemed less heavy now, overshadowed by James's words. As she reached the elevator, the city's lights glowed brighter below, a silent promise of something new. Diane's heart, though bruised, beat with a cautious hope, the card in her bag a lifeline to a future she couldn't yet imagine. The city's pulse softened as Diane Ramirez descended from the glittering heights of the Celestine, her quick-bite jacket still damp with wine. Its stains a silent testament to the night's ordeal. The service elevator hummed, carrying her away from the gala's opulent clamor to the gritty reality below. Her bike, chained to a pole under a flickering streetlight, waited like a loyal companion. Diane's steps echoed on the pavement, her sneakers squeaking faintly. The weight of James Sterling's business card in her bag, a quiet counterpoint to the ache in her chest. The city's skyline loomed behind her, its lights now distant, their brilliance muted by the late hour. She mounted her bike, the cool night air brushing her skin, and pedaled toward home, her mind a whirl of exhaustion and cautious hope. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional whoosh of a passing car and the low hum of neon signs. Diane's breath steadied with each turn of the pedals, the rhythm grounding her as she navigated familiar routes. Her neighborhood, a patchwork of aging apartment buildings and corner stores, felt like a different world from the Celestine's polished excess. She parked her bike outside a modest brick building, its chipped paint and cracked stoop a stark contrast to the gala's grandeur. Diane's hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the door, the wine's sticky residue still clinging to her jacket, a lingering reminder of Victor's cruelty. Inside, the apartment was warm, the faint scent of chamomile tea drifting from the kitchen. Her grandmother Clara sat at the small dining table, her frail frame wrapped in a faded shawl, a mug cradled in her hands. The soft glow of a single lamp cast shadows across her lined face, her eyes bright with concern as they landed on Diane. "Mija, you're soaked," Clara said, her voice gentle but probing. The Spanish lilt a comfort in the quiet room. Diane managed a tired smile, slipping off her cap to reveal curls matted with wine. "Just a rough night, abuela," she said, her tone light despite the weight in her chest. She set her bag down, the business card inside a secret she wasn't ready to share. Clara's gaze lingered, her intuition sharp. "Rough how?" she pressed, setting her mug down with a soft clink. Diane hesitated, her fingers brushing the stained jacket as she sank into a chair across from her grandmother. The table, scarred from years of shared meals, felt like a sanctuary. "Some rich guy at the gala, he made a scene," Diane said, her voice low, the words heavy with the memory of laughter and flashing phones. "Spilled wine on me, said some things, but it's done." She avoided Clara's eyes, focusing on a crack in the table's edge, unwilling to let the night's humiliation spill into this safe space. Clara reached across, her hand warm against Diane's. "You're stronger than their nonsense," she said, her voice firm despite its softness. "You always have been." Diane nodded, her throat tight, the warmth of her grandmother's touch a balm to her bruised spirit. She thought of the countless nights Clara had stayed up, praying over hospital bills, and the stories she'd told of her struggles as a young woman. That strength, passed down like an heirloom, steadied Diane now. The creak of a door broke the moment, and Jamal appeared, his lanky frame filling the hallway. At 17, he carried a quiet intensity, his eyes bright with the ambition Diane worked to nurture. "You look like you fought a vineyard," he said, his grin teasing but his gaze concerned as he took in her disheveled state. Diane laughed, a small, genuine sound that eased the tension in her chest. "Something like that," she said, leaning back in her chair. "But I got through it, and something else happened." She reached into her bag, pulling out James's business card, its embossed lettering catching the lamp's glow. "A man at the gala, someone important, saw what happened," Diane began, her voice cautious but tinged with a spark of excitement. "He runs a charity, Sterling Futures, wants me to come by tomorrow to talk about a job." Jamal's eyes widened, his grin spreading. "A job, like a real one, not delivering?" His enthusiasm was infectious, and Diane felt her hope flicker brighter. "Maybe," she said, her smile tentative. "He said it's about helping people like us, kids with big dreams, communities that need a boost." Jamal leaned against the counter, his excitement palpable. "Diane, this is huge. You've been killing yourself for us. You deserve this." His words hit her hard, a reminder of the weight she carried, not out of duty but love. Clara squeezed her hand again, her eyes shining. "Go to that meeting, Mia. See what it's about. You've got nothing to lose." Diane nodded, the cards, weight in her palm, a tangible promise, yet doubt lingered, a shadow cast by years of scraping by. Alone later, Diane stood by her bedroom window, the city's faint glow filtering through the curtains. She thought of the gala, the crowd's laughter, Victor's sneer, and James's unexpected kindness. The night had been a crucible, testing her resilience, but James's offer felt like a crack in the wall of her struggles. Could she trust it? She'd spent so long fighting for every dollar, every moment of dignity. The idea of a new path, one where her strength could build something bigger, stirred a cautious hope. Diane slipped the card onto her nightstand, its presence a beacon in the dark. As she lay down, the city's hum a distant lullaby. She resolved to face tomorrow, not just for herself, but for those who believed in her. The morning sun sliced through the city's concrete canyons, casting a golden haze over the sleek glass tower that housed Sterling Futures headquarters. Diane Ramirez stepped off the subway, her sneakers scuffing the pavement as she navigated the bustling downtown streets. Her navy quick-bite jacket was gone, replaced by a crisp blouse and slacks, borrowed from a neighbor to fit the occasion. The business card from James Sterling, its edges worn from her nervous handling, sat tucked in her pocket, a talisman of possibility. Diane's heart thrummed with a mix of anticipation and doubt, her dark eyes scanning the towering building before her. The memory of the gala's humiliation lingered, but her grandmother's encouragement and Jamal's excitement propelled her forward, each step a quiet act of defiance against a world that often overlooked her. The lobby of Sterling Futures gleamed with modern elegance, polished marble floors, minimalist furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city's skyline like a living canvas. Diane's reflection flickered in the glass, her posture straight despite the flutter in her chest. She approached the reception desk where a young woman with a warm smile checked her in. "Mr. Sterling's expecting you," she said, gesturing toward a sleek elevator. Diane nodded, her fingers brushing the card in her pocket as she rode to the top floor, the city falling away below. The elevator's soft ding announced her arrival, and she stepped into a corridor lined with abstract art, the air scented with faint notes of cedar and ambition. James Sterling's office was a study in understated power, dark wood paneling, a broad desk scattered with papers, and a panoramic view of the city that stretched like a promise. He stood as Diane entered, his charcoal suit impeccable, his green eyes bright with a welcoming intensity. "Diane," he said, his voice warm but professional, extending a hand. "I'm glad you came." Diane shook it, her grip firm despite the nerves coiling within. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Sterling," she said, her tone steady, though her mind raced with questions about what this meeting could mean. "Please, have a seat," James said, gesturing to a leather chair. Across from his desk, Diane sat, her hands resting lightly on her lap, the blouse's unfamiliar fabric a reminder of how far she was from her usual world. The office's quiet elegance contrasted sharply with the chaos of her delivery routes. Yet James's demeanor put her at ease, his presence lacking the condescension she'd braced for. He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I want to give you a clearer picture of what we do at Sterling Futures," he began, his voice measured, each word carrying the weight of conviction. "Our mission is to break down barriers through education, job training, and community programs for people who've had to fight for every opportunity." Diane listened, her dark eyes fixed on him, absorbing the scope of his words. She thought of her battles, Nights spent calculating bills, the sting of dismissive customers, the constant push to keep her family afloat. James's vision felt like a distant star, bright but hard to reach. We work with individuals who have resilience, who've faced challenges and come out stronger, he continued, his gaze steady. I saw that in you at the gala, Diane. You didn't just endure. You held your ground with a kind of integrity most people can't muster. Her throat tightened, the praise catching her off guard. Diane shifted in her seat, her fingers brushing the armrest, grounding herself. I appreciate that, she said, her voice soft but clear. But I'm not sure what you see in me. I'm just a delivery driver trying to make ends meet. Her honesty slipped out raw and unguarded, a reflection of the doubt that had shadowed her since the gala. James's expression didn't waver. If anything, it softened, his eyes reflecting a quiet understanding. That's exactly why, he said, leaning forward slightly. You've got a perspective that comes from real experience, Diane. That's invaluable to us. He paused, letting the words settle. I'd like to offer you a role as a program coordinator. You'd help design and run initiatives, mentorship, programs, scholarships, community workshops, focused on people like you who've had to carve their path. He slid a folder across the desk, its contents outlining a salary that made Diane's breath catch, a figure that dwarfed her quick-bite earnings, alongside benefits that could ease her grandmother's medical burdens. Diane stared at the folder, her heart pounding. The numbers blurred slightly, not from tears but from the weight of possibility. What made you choose me? She asked, her voice steady but searching, her eyes meeting his. You don't know me beyond one bad night. James's smile was faint but genuine. I've been around enough people to recognize potential, he said. You didn't let that moment at the gala define you. You showed resilience, integrity, and a drive to keep going. That's what we need. Someone who understands the stakes, who can inspire others because they've lived it. The words settled over Diane like a warm blanket, stirring a hope she'd long buried. She thought of Jamal, his textbook spread across their kitchen table, and her grandmother's quiet strength, urging her to seize this chance. I'd be honored to join, she said, her voice firm now, infused with a resolve that felt new yet familiar. Thank you for believing in me. James nodded, his smile widening. Welcome to Sterling Futures, Diane. You'll bring something unique to this work. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. As Diane stood, the folder in her hands felt like a key to a door she hadn't dared imagine. The city's skyline sparkled through the windows, its vastness no longer daunting, but inviting. She shook James's hand again, her grip stronger. Now, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The elevator ride down was a quiet interlude, the city's hum a backdrop to her racing thoughts. Diane stepped back onto the street, the folder tucked into her bag beside the worn business card, her steps carrying a new purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it felt like a path she could shape. The Celestine stood, reborn under the twilight sky, its rooftop no longer a playground for the elite, but a vibrant hub pulsing with new purpose. Gone were the gilded trappings of exclusivity. The marble floors now echoed with the chatter of local youth, their voices mingling with the hum of possibility. Months had passed since the gala, and the venue had been transformed into a community center, its chandeliers softened by warm lighting, its terrace lined with tables for workshops and mentorship sessions. Diane Ramirez stood at the heart of it, her clipboard in hand, her presence a quiet force as she orchestrated the evening's event. Her navy blouse, a far cry from the wine-stained quick-bite jacket, moved with her as she navigated the space, her dark eyes bright with focus and pride. The air carried the scent of fresh coffee and baked goods, a nod to the community's warmth, rather than the gala's opulence. Diane paused to adjust a banner that read, Sterling Futures Building Tomorrow, its bold letters a testament to the vision she'd embraced. As a program coordinator, she had spent weeks shaping this night, a launch event for the center's youth mentorship program, designed to offer skills, scholarships, and hope to kids like her brother, Jamal. The memory of that humiliating night at the gala lingered, but it fueled Diane's resolve, her work a defiance of the barriers she'd once faced. The crowd was diverse: former Celestine staff, local activists, and teens from nearby neighborhoods, their energy a stark contrast to the gala's polished detachment. Diane moved among them, her smile warm as she greeted a group of high schoolers, their notebooks open, eager for the coding workshop she'd organized. "You're gonna love this," she said, her voice steady, infused with the encouragement she'd once craved. A girl with braids nodded, her eyes wide with anticipation, and Diane felt a pang of recognition, seeing her younger self in the girl's quiet ambition. James Sterling stood near the terrace's edge, his charcoal suit blending into the evening's soft glow. He watched Diane with a quiet pride, his role as a major shareholder now intertwined with a mission to reshape Celestine's legacy. The event was his brainchild, but Diane's execution had brought it to life. She caught his eye, offering a small nod, their partnership a seamless blend of vision and action. Months of collaboration had built a mutual respect. Their late-night planning sessions were filled with shared ideas for community impact. Diane's perspective, rooted in her struggles, had shaped the program's heart, and James valued her voice as much as his own. As the event began, Diane guided a group of former staff, bartenders and servers who'd once been invisible like her to their seats, their faces alight with pride at being part of this new chapter. The room buzzed with anticipation, the jazz replaced by a local band's upbeat rhythm, their music a celebration of the city's diversity. Diane checked her clipboard, ensuring every detail was in place, mentors paired with students, workshop materials ready, and a speech she'd prepared, her first public dress since joining Sterling Futures. Her stomach fluttered, but she pushed the nerves aside, her resolve anchored by the faces around her. James took the stage, his presence commanding yet approachable, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Tonight, we're not just opening a space," he said, his green eyes sweeping the room. "We're building a bridge between dreams and opportunities, between communities that have been divided for too long." The audience applauded, their enthusiasm a wave that lifted Diane's spirits. James gestured toward her, his smile warm. "I want to introduce someone who's made this possible. Diane Ramirez, our program coordinator, whose vision and heart, you're at the core of this work." The crowd turned to Diane, their applause swelling, and she felt a rush of warmth, her cheeks flushing as she stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly, but she gripped the microphone, her voice clear and steady. "This place used to be about who could afford to be here," she began, her words deliberate, resonating with the weight of her journey. "Now it's about who belongs, and that's everyone. We're creating a space where kids like my brother, like so many of you, can learn, grow, and know they're valued." Her gaze swept the room, meeting the eyes of a young boy clutching a notebook, a mother nodding in agreement, a former server smiling with pride. Diane's voice grew stronger, her words a tapestry of hope and conviction. "It's not just about a building," she said, echoing James's vision but infusing it with her fire. "It's about changing how we see each other, about building a community where no one feels invisible." The applause erupted, thunderous and heartfelt, filling the space with a unity that made Diane's heart race. She stepped back, her breath shallow but her spirit soaring, the weight of the gala's humiliation now a distant shadow. James clapped her on the shoulder as she returned. To the crowd, his smile a silent affirmation. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low, meant only for her. Diane nodded, her eyes bright with gratitude, the moment a milestone she hadn't dared imagine months ago. As the event continued, she mingled with the guests, listening to a teen share dreams of becoming an engineer, guiding a mentor to a workshop station, her presence a quiet anchor in the room's vibrant chaos. The Celestine no longer echoed with the elite's laughter, but with the promise of a future where everyone had a place. Diane stood taller, her clipboard a symbol of her new role, her heart alight with the possibility of what lay ahead. The Celestine stood as a beacon under the starlit sky, its transformed rooftop alive with the hum of community, a far cry from the elitist gala that had once defined it. The air carried the warmth of shared dreams, the clink of coffee mugs replacing the clatter of champagne flutes. Diane Ramirez moved through the space with quiet confidence, her clipboard now a familiar extension of her purpose. Her navy blouse, crisp and professional, bore no trace of the wine stains that had marked her months ago. As program coordinator for Sterling Futures, Diane had become a cornerstone of this new Celestine, her dark eyes alight with pride as she oversaw a bustling evening of mentorship workshops. The city's skyline shimmered beyond, its lights a canvas of possibility, mirroring the hope that now anchored her heart. Diane paused to guide a shy teenager to a coding station, her smile encouraging as she knelt to meet his gaze. "You've got this," she said, her voice a steady beacon, echoing the support she'd once craved. The boy nodded, his hesitation giving way to determination, and Diane felt a surge of fulfillment. Her work had touched dozens of lives, teens securing scholarships, families finding stability through job training, communities knitting together in ways she'd never imagined. Each success was a brick in the foundation she was building, a legacy born from the ashes of that humiliating night. Her thoughts drifted to Jamal, now a freshman at an engineering college, his tuition covered by a Sterling Futures scholarship. Diane had watched him pack his bags, his grin wide with pride, her own heart swelling with relief. Their grandmother Clara was stronger now, her medical bills eased by Diane's new salary, her laughter a constant in their home. These victories, hard-won and deeply personal, fueled Diane's drive, transforming the pain of the gala into a quiet strength that shaped her every decision. James Sterling stood near the terrace's edge, his silhouette framed against the city's glow. His role as a major shareholder had taken on new meaning. His vision for the Celestine was realized through Diane's tireless work. Their partnership had grown into a seamless collaboration, his trust in her evident in the way he sought, her input on new initiatives. Tonight, as the center buzzed with activity, James watched Diane with a quiet admiration, his green eyes reflecting the pride of a mentor who'd found an equal. He approached her as she adjusted a stack of workshop materials, his voice low but warm. "You've turned this place into something extraordinary, Diane," he said, his words carrying a weight that made her pause. "The Celestine isn't just a building anymore. It's a heartbeat, and you're at its core." Diane's cheeks warmed, but she met his gaze, her smile steady. "It's a team effort," she said, her voice soft but firm, deflecting the praise while acknowledging its truth. "This is what you wanted, a place for everyone." James shook his head slightly, his expression earnest. "I had the idea, but you brought it to life. Your perspective, your drive, it's what makes this work." His words settled over her, a validation of the path she'd carved, each step a defiance of the barriers that had once loomed so large. As the evening wound down, Diane stepped onto the terrace, the city's lights sprawling like a sea of stars. She leaned against the railing, her clipboard set aside, her thoughts turning inward. The gala felt like a lifetime ago, the sting of wine, the bite of laughter, the weight of being unseen. That night had been a crucible, forging her into someone who could stand here now, not as a delivery driver but as a leader, her voice shaping futures. Diane's heart swelled with a quiet pride, not for the accolades but for the lives she'd touched, the hope she'd kindled in others. She thought of a girl she'd mentored, now applying to college, her eyes bright with dreams Diane had helped nurture. She thought of a single mother who'd landed a job through their training program, her gratitude a tearful embrace. These moments, small but profound, were her legacy, a tapestry woven from resilience and compassion. Diane's fingers brushed the railing, the cool metal grounding her as she reflected on her journey. The doubt that had once shadowed her, could she trust this path? Could she rise above her past? Had faded, replaced by a certainty that she belonged here, shaping a world where no one felt invisible. James joined her at the railing, his presence a quiet anchor. "You've given this place a soul," he said, his voice soft against the city's hum. "I knew you had something special, but you've exceeded every expectation." Diane turned to him, her dark eyes shining. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her words raw, carrying the weight of a truth she'd rarely spoken. "That night at the gala, I felt like nothing. You changed that." James's smile was gentle, his nod a silent acknowledgement of their shared vision. As the last guests departed, the Celestine grew quiet, its warmth lingering in the empty chairs and scattered notebooks. Diane stood alone on the terrace, the city's glow wrapping her in a silent embrace. She was no longer the woman who'd pedaled through the night, unseen and undervalued. She was Diane Ramirez, a force of change, her heart full of possibility. The road ahead stretched wide, its uncertainties no longer daunting but inviting. With a final glance at the skyline, Diane smiled, her spirit alight with the promise of a future she would shape, not just for herself, but for all who dared to dream. What an incredible journey we've shared with Diane Ramirez, from a night of adversity to a legacy of hope. Her story reminds us that resilience and courage can transform not just one life, but an entire community. What did you take away from Diane's triumph? How did her strength inspire you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Your reflections fuel our storytelling, and we're grateful for every voice in this conversation. Thank you for joining us on this powerful ride, for believing in stories that uplift and unite. If you were moved by Diane's journey, share this video with friends and subscribe to catch our next tale of inspiration. Until then, keep shining, keep dreaming, and we'll see you in the next story.